Many of you may have heard of Andrew Wilson for being the guy who promotes traditional masculinity while not being able to open a jar.
It's all it's slick now.
It's a little,
See,
little
it
fun.
is.
I gotta grip it.
Uh-oh, Andrew. If you can't open it either.
Well, your hand greased the whole top of it.
My hand are fine. Here, high five.
It
My
literally-
shoes are slow.
It's look, feel it. Isn't that greasy?
It was like that already. Oh my God.
No,
you're
it
ridiculous.
wasn't. You greased the top.
Use your
Oh my
shirt.
Jesus,
Use your
Andrew.
shirt,
If you can't open the olive jar, you cannot
Here,
blame my
while we're
hand.
doing olive jar.
If you're so strong, you should open it.
Yeah, I got to be able to grip it.
Okay, we'll grip it. Let's
It's
go.
literally slippery.
I guess Andrew needs to marry a man. He clearly isn't strong enough to function independently.
You'll get the same thing. Come in here, Jake. You think? Come on, you'll see for yourself. You can't get your f***ing hand on it. Try it. No. That was bullshit.
So we all know that he's an embarrassing example of a traditional male, but do you folks also know that he's an embarrassingly bad apologist as well?
You said God is a man-made concept used to enforce morality, as are all religions. I believe Jesus was a real man, but he was not the Son of God, as God is not real, your words, not mine. You guys, Andrew, is this something you want to bite on? Is this something you want to bite on?
Yeah, absolutely.
But let me just, let's do, it's 10:15 now. You guys have 4 minutes, 10:20. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's start just very quickly the concept that God is made up.
Right.
Okay, and that's actually a way more powerful claim than you're not sure. You realize that, right?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I'm not sure because I think that's the most logical.
So then, if you're not sure, you're conceding that there could be a God.
There could be, but the percent chance that the being that they describe in the Bible is real or any other religious book, I think, is not likely. No.
Yeah, okay, so then you're not an atheist, you're an agnostic.
Yes.
You're saying it could be true.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that the laws of logic are real?
They're real inventions. The laws of logic were invented to describe the boundaries of what we can and can't make sense of. For example, I believe in the law of non-contradiction because I can't make sense of contradictions. The laws of logic describe an aspect of how our minds work, and since our minds are a function of our brains, they ultimately describe how our brains work. The laws of logic are physical phenomena in that regard.
I actually don't know what all the laws of logic are.
Well, so like, for instance, let's just take the law of identity. You can't be the person next to you, and the person next to you can't be you. You have to be you, and only you can be you, correct?
That's not what the law of identity says. The law of identity says that a thing is identical to itself. It doesn't make any claims about what anything is not or can't be.
Yes.
Okay, and is that always true, or is that a man-made construct?
False dichotomy. Universal truths can be man-made constructs. The concept of bachelorhood is a cultural invention. It's not something that was discovered in nature. Regardless, it's still true that there never has been and never will be a married bachelor given what the concept was invented to mean. There doesn't need to be a God that keeps married bachelors from existing or keeps other contradictions from being true. Folks who think a God has to exist in order for logic to exist seem to think that a universe without a God would be one in which there would be all kinds of nonsensical things happening. There's no reason to assume that this is the case.
I'm pretty sure that's always true.
Well, if it's always true, that's really, really strange, right?
But
How could you have a thing which does not exist but is always true? How could that be possible?
Saying that something is a social invention is not the same as saying that it doesn't exist. Invented abstractions are brought into existence the moment we invent them. For example, money was invented, and it exists because humans invented it. Invented abstractions can even apply retroactively to times before they were invented. For example, we can accurately say that the summer solstice of the year 1 million BCE occurred in June, despite the fact that the month of June hadn't been invented yet. And what does that have to do with God? I guess maybe Andrew is thinking that truths can only be universal if there is an eternal mind to say that they are.
3 minutes back.
I'm not sure how to answer, but I don't think that God is not always real because not everyone believes he's real. So by that logic,
What does that have to do with anything?
So
It doesn't matter if you believe that the law of identity is real. It's still real.
The laws of logic are real in the sense that they are accurate descriptions of how we seem to think. But again, how we think is ultimately a physical phenomenon. The laws of logic don't exist as some free-floating Platonic forms with an ontology that is distinct from the regularities they describe.
Right.
Right, but I don't think that works for God, unfortunately.
Well, oh, you don't think that works for God?
No, because I don't think that there's some man in the sky that's going to rain frogs down and...
What do you mean a man in the sky? Your conceptualization of God is very bizarre here, but let's just stick back with the idea of these metaphysical truths like the law of logic. Mm-hmm. Is mathematics something which is discovered, or is it something which you invent?
It's a bit of both. The most basic mathematical concepts are invented, and then there are implications of those concepts which are discovered. For example, right-angle triangles are an invented concept, but Pythagorean theorem is an implication of that concept which was discovered. The fact that we can make discoveries about things we invent is not evidence that they aren't really inventions.
I think it's something invented to describe a reality.
And that reality is what?
Is if I have 2 oranges in this hand and 2 oranges in this hand, I have 4 oranges. The reality is the oranges.
So 2 plus 2 always equals 4, whether or not your mind is present to perceive that that's true?
Yes.
So these things are true regardless, they're mind independent, right?
Actually, no. In the absence of any minds to conceive of the concept of 2 plus 2 equaling 4, that statement is meaningless rather than true.
Yes.
So if these things are not created by man, but rather exist instead as a metaphysical conceptualization of truth, how is that possible absent a creator?
I don't believe that abstract concepts are true independent of any minds, but even if they were, a thing can exist without a creator in the same way Andrew probably believes that God can exist without a creator.
So you're saying because we have mathematics, we have a creator?
We have knowledge.
No. I'm saying that if there's transcendental truths, this is a wide concept and I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just trying to break it down very quickly, right? If there's transcendental truths, meaning there are truths which exist, right, outside of the mind, how is that possible if you are claiming that truth is mind dependent?
If you really believe that they were mind independent, then you would believe that they can exist independent of even God's mind. However, you seem to be arguing that they are dependent upon God's mind.
Wouldn't that allude to there being a mind?
Truth existing absent the mind alludes to the existence of a mind?
I'll be honest, this is getting very heady for me and I'm having a hard time following.
Well, it's just to condense it super easy. Okay. If like you say everything is subjective and mind dependent, then how can you have things which are true even absent the mind?
Again, he seems to be arguing that if truths can be mind independent, they must be dependent upon a mind. Maybe what he means is that there are truths that exist independent of all human minds, therefore there must be a non-human mind. I think the idea that truths can exist independent of human minds is a product of misunderstanding the fact that we can imagine scenarios in which no human minds exist, while still applying invented concepts to those imagined scenarios. We can accurately say that the summer solstice of 1 million BCE occurred in June, despite the fact that June hadn't been invented yet. The fact that we can do this doesn't mean that the month of June is anything more than a cultural contrivance. Similarly, the fact that we can imagine scenarios in which no humans exist while still using numbers to count the imagined oranges in such a scenario does not mean that numbers are not invented.
Unless there's another mind.
Well, because math is just the words we chose to describe. So like,
what about the laws of logic, like the law of identity, which is always true?
It's not always true. In the absence of any minds, it's meaningless.
No matter what, it's always true. It can't be a human construct. It has to be objectively true.
Human constructs can be objectively true. It is objectively true that bachelors are not married, despite the fact that bachelorhood is a human construct. It's not subjective because its truth is not relative to any particular subject.
If that's true, and you're saying everything is mind dependent, but this would still be true even absent a mind, wouldn't that allude to the fact that there's another mind?
If you think there has to be another mind in order to make it true, then you don't actually believe that it is true absent the mind.
See, I'm not sure if I'm prepared to say that because I don't know that I'm at the level.
Well, then all you have to do is give me a scenario in where the laws of logic wouldn't be true.
If they had never been invented, they wouldn't be true. They wouldn't be false either. They would simply be meaningless.
Like, for instance, could planet Earth be planet Earth and not planet Earth at the same time?
Well, that would be a scenario in which the law of identity is false. Andrew seems to think that a statement can only be true or false. He doesn't seem to realize that a statement can also be meaningless. And does he think that in a universe without humans or a god that the law of identity could be false? Does he think that a god must exist in order to keep contradictions from being true, otherwise they could be?
No.
Is that possible even if all minds are gone? Is that possible?
No, it's not, which is proof that even if God's mind doesn't exist, the law would still not be false. Therefore, God is not necessary to keep it from being false.
No. Well, but planet Earth is a
So
literal
if it's
thing.
objectively true, then truth to you is mind subjective, right? This is a subjective thing. But if this is objectively true, then wouldn't it be mind dependent?
What does Andrew think objective means? If it's objectively true, why would it be mind-dependent? Mind dependence is what subjective means. Andrew goes on these manosphere podcasts, despite the fact that his Christian Puritanism isn't always welcomed by the rakes who typically frequent them.
Definitely so.
I've lived the lowest lows and the highest highs.
Well, what's the distinction? After you make X amount, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you look at these studies done on this, it does not.
I don't fit no studies,
It does not
bro.
hugely improve a person's life.
Are you proud of who the
Bro,
you are?
why
Well,
don't
look
you
at.
even
Are
let
you
me
proud?
get-
If you look in the mirror, would you guys say this motherfucker's proud of who the he is? That's a bag of trash, dude. Pull your shirt
Because
off
I've
and
been-
tell me you're proud
Because
of yourself.
I've been to prison?
Jesus Christ,
Because
look
I've been
at
to
you,
prison?
bro. You got 10-inch arms and men don't have
No,
guys.
they go to prison where they get
Yeah,
where
they
get
do.
up the ass.
Never been to prison. Look,
That's
you're talking
what
about shit you
happens.
don't know.
They go to prison where they get.
Now you get your ass beat in front of
You think that
everybody.
that's better? You think that that's better?
Let's let him give his definition of success, and then
Having tits and 10-inch arms is what a man is, you guys.
let's let him
Please
get his,
don't listen to that.
Wes, let's let him get his thing out, and then
We can have different opinions.
yeah.
Anyway, back to where I was at.
Boobs.
Yeah. Okay. Prison.
Are those fleas you woke up with starting to get a little itchy, Andrew?
And that, what are your criticisms of religion?
You said it was delusional.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think it is wildly illogical to me from my perspective. I don't understand personally why a God that seems to glorify suffering to earn peace and eternal life, what's deserving of worship? What's
but how do you?
deserving of...
But this is a problem. Is like you use religious terms in order to criticize religion.
Suffering is a religious term? I think what Andrew is trying to do here is the typical apologist response to the problem of evil, which is to say that you have to presuppose a god in order to say that there's even any such thing as evil. That rebuttal doesn't work here because she said suffering, not evil. Even if she did say evil, that is not an admission that there is any such thing. I can say that there is evil in the world as the Bible defines evil, without admitting that what the Bible says is evil conforms to some objective standard that I believe exists. The point of bringing up the problem of evil is to show that God does not live up to his own standards. Showing that to be the case is in no way a concession that God's alleged standards are objectively correct.
Like when you say words like suffering, how do you account for suffering? Suffering just means shit that you don't like.
The point of bringing up suffering is that God is allegedly perfectly loving, and I don't understand how a being with the power to prevent the suffering of the people he loves would elect not to do so. Sometimes apologists will say that God is allowing the people he loves to suffer for the purpose of achieving some end that is so good that it makes up for the suffering. This, however, assumes that this allegedly all-powerful God does not have the power to achieve that end without allowing the suffering.
That's it. That's all suffering means.
Well, I can narrow it down a little bit. I mean, if I...
You're going to narrow. You will. But you're just going to narrow it down to subjective experiences I don't like.
Why would a loving, all-powerful God subject the people he supposedly loves to experiences they don't like? If he's really all-powerful, then he has the power to prevent those experiences.
Or don't prefer.
I think
And if that's not what it narrows down to, I'm going to be stunned, but I'm going to let you narrow it down. So what is suffering?
I would say the suffering I was more referring to would be suffering that I believe is more unjust, not just because someone made a bad decision or messed up. I'm more referring to children and cancer and horrific things like that. The most common thing that I've ever been told is everything happens for a reason, and if this terrible thing happens to this young child, leukemia, things like that, that it was all God's will.
Oh.
And I personally don't understand that whatsoever, because what has such a young child done to deserve any kind of
That's
test
really
from
strange
God?
that you're in you were raised Catholic.
Yes.
And they told you it's in God's will
Yes.
that people get cancer.
Given that he had the power to prevent it and elected not to, then yeah. If you deliberately allow something that you are under no obligation to allow, how are you not willing it to be the case? To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.